I'd love to find out how comedy plays a role in mental health. How did you discover comedy? What was the most difficult decision you had to make in order to fulfill your destiny? How important is it to have boundaries? How long have you had your podcast?
Since 2011.
Okay, so you're an expert. This is a new experience for me, new field. So I've been a content creator for over a decade. And this thing of podcasts and interviews, I just like to have conversations. So it's fun for me. And when they told me that you were coming on, I was like, who is he? So I looked into it, and then I'm like, oh, okay. Beans and cornbread had a fight. Beans, not cornbread. I was like, you were a big part of me growing up in the childhood.
I love when I hear that. I get that a lot from younger people. They're like, my favorite memories are watching Friday nights with my mom. And it's funny because when I first started doing that show, the original contract was for 16 episodes. And I thought people don't want to be interrupted watching the movie. This thing isn't even going to last 16 episodes, and it lasted 16 years, which just shows how much I know about show business.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So it was Dinner and a Movie, TBS.
Yep.
I loved it. I was actually looking at old episodes, and I was like, they should do this again. Have you ever thought about this?
I feel like it would be sad when you see people all of a sudden 30 years later trying to recreate something. It just never has that spark. I wouldn't mind, if there was a documentary about it and we were being interviewed, but as far as actually doing it, I don't know. It feels like it would be better for a new set of people to do it. But I do miss the camaraderie. Yeah. And you're getting paid to eat. I mean, there would be times I'd be eating this amazing food and I would think, how lucky am I that I'm getting paid to crack jokes and eat?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I saw the DDP episode too. You got slammed on the ground. It was brilliant.
Oh,
did you practice that? Or how
we did twice and it hurt both times.
Oh my God.
And, dude, I couldn't hold a pen for 3 days. My glasses broke. But it's still if somebody came over to my house, I would never say, hey, watch this piece of footage from Dinner and a Movie or my stand-up. But that thing, so proud of it.
Yeah.
So proud of it.
So cool.
Yeah. I mean, so many little boys, we grow up, kind of doing the whole wrestling thing and pretending you're in front of a big crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that they told me right before I go out there is they go, oh, when the audience gets riled up, they like to throw coins in batteries.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, oh, it'll be okay. They announce us. Just as my foot comes out the curtain, I hear this guy go, "You're dead, cooking boy."
Oh my gosh.
But it was fun. It was truly scary, but it was fun. It was fun.
Wow. Wow. 16 years. Wow. That's incredible. Well, I say all that to say it's a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to be here.
Oh,
in the
thanks.
sauna sweating with you.
Right back at you.
I see you sweating a little bit already.
Oh, yeah.
If it gets too hot, let me know. We can, go out. So after this, we do a hydration session. I don't know if they explain it to you, where after we sweat, we take a quick little moment. Then we sit over there, drink some spring water. We've got a foot bath with Epsom salt, if you choose, whatever your flavor,
Yeah, you're making my podcast feel low rent.
Nah. It's all about, self-care and healing.
It really is. I mean, and self-care took me years to understand because I think when you don't practice self-care, you don't understand that you're missing self-care. You don't realize until you start taking care of yourself, going to the doctor when you need to, taking a nap when you're tired, asking for help. Those were all things that I was like, that's for other people.
Yeah. I think it was Jack Cornfield, who I don't know if you know Jack.
Great guy.
He said, your compassion is incomplete if it doesn't include yourself.
Yeah. I had an epiphany one day that it's important to have compassion for others, but not at the expense of compassion for yourself.
Not at the expense. That's it.
And that was the biggest, I think, step forward in healing for me, was listening to my body. When we grow up and And, a lot of people have trauma. And I think the most common thing is to minimize it, intellectualize your way out of it. But if you don't sit in those feelings and really process it, you don't get back into your body, and you don't let your body become your friend again. Because I think as we begin to heal, we get the opportunity to go, oh, my stomach's in a knot when I'm around this person or these people or this situation. And then you have the conscious option to say, do I want to put myself in that situation again? Is it just, reality being filtered through my fears, or is this something that's genuinely unhealthy for me? And that was a big, big turning point in finding peace and being comfortable with who I am, letting go of the parts of ourselves that I think when we were younger, we thought, oh, I need to be more. I need to take on this. But the older I get, the more I realize it's about shedding.
Not about, what do they say? The path to enlightenment isn't about adding truths, but removing lies.
Yeah. Could not agree more.
Yeah.
Could not agree more.
Well, let's get, you mentioned who I am. You said those words, and I want to ask you, I want to talk about your origin story and how you got into comedy. And then I know you're a big advocate in mental health, and I'd love to find out how comedy plays a role in mental health, and we'll get into that. But first, how did you discover comedy? Tell me a little bit about your story.
I remember getting my first laugh in first grade, and it was like a drug. And I grew up with a dad who was physically present, but he was checked out. He was, an untreated alcoholic, and, good guy, the most financially responsible alcoholic I've ever known. But I think I grew up with a subconscious belief that I wasn't special. Maybe a better way to phrase it was that I was not worthy. Yeah. Something was lacking in me, that I wasn't worthy of his attention. And so attention became a way to validate myself. And I mean, when you get a laugh from people, it's concrete validation. I didn't realize until later that a lot of my comedy was coming from hostility. And so even though people might have been laughing, they might have been revolted by who it was, deep inside. But I couldn't even see that stuff until I got into therapy and realized how angry I was. So comedy was not for other people. It was for me. And I think most comics, we don't choose to go into comedy because we like it. We do it because we feel we have to, that there is something inside of us that is missing. And while I think the craft of it is great and important, and that's the thing to focus on, I think if we're spiritually sick, we're just focused in on the result of our comedy. It's all about us.
Wow. Focus on the result. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to get into that, like this whole, this is a field that you grew up in, lived it for decades. This whole thing that I see, I kind of call it the sad clown syndrome, right? You look at people like, the stories of Robin Williams, Jim Carrey. I think Sarah Silverman has some, mental health things going on. I think it was the late 90s. Martin Lawrence had a nervous breakdown. How do you see this sad clown syndrome?
Never, ever surprises me. I've yet to meet somebody who's truly funny that isn't battling some shadow, some dark energy within them. Whether it's negative self-talk or shit that really happened to them, and those usually go hand in hand. I don't think children are born with negative self-talk and self-hatred. I don't think that's a stereotype. I think it's a truth.
Comedy is often used as kind of a mask, like a suit of armor. Almost.
Absolutely. Wow. I look back at some of my old stand-up and I cringe because there was such a lack of vulnerability. And it wasn't until I started doing the podcast that I realized, this is the medium that I'm really meant for, because it's safe for me to go 5 minutes, 30 minutes without making a joke, and to feel seen. Yes, there's a part of the podcast that is altruistic, but there's a huge part of it that, just like I think when therapists get into being therapists, there's a part of it that they're doing for themselves. They want to understand themselves better. I'm sure you've discovered that as you have deep conversations with people, that you're learning more about yourself, and not that you're doing it for you, but the byproduct of that.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, we teach what we most need to learn. I think
I love that.
Yeah, in my life, absolutely. I mean, I grew up very introverted, introspective, shy, wasn't engaging in school or anything. And so what do I do now? I try to show people how to best live their most fullest, authentic selves, versions, because it took me to go in and find that within myself.
Yeah. The
barriers, the things that were blocking me, limiting me from, I think, reaching my true potential and speaking from my true voice.
Yeah. That the forced gym membership for the soul, we get to benefit from those muscles later in life. If we can do it in a healthy way, and begin to understand that the universe hasn't cursed us, but rather it might have a path for us with meaning, and the first 100 yards are a shit show. But the further down it deepens connection. I'm sure you've discovered in your life there is no better muscle relaxer than a sense of meaning and purpose.
And I know you know about the Viktor Frankl Man's Search for Meaning.
Is there any book that is more filled with quotes that can help people?
I mean, if you could find it there, it's you can find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Within ourselves, within any situation and circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kindness and meaning. Yeah, it's really, that the longest journey, right? The 7 inches from the head to the heart, really stepping into our true selves, our true spirits, is super important. And I think the meaning of why we're here, to be who we are fully, authentically.
Yeah. Do you ever look back on your childhood and feel gratitude for the fact that you did feel like an outsider, withdrawn, because that gave you the time to be an observer and then be a great thinker later in life?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, while everybody else was out, socializing, partying, and doing this and that, I was whether it was at home or eventually in college, in my dorm room, trying to create music and just looking within, reading books. So I absolutely think there's a superpower in solitude that can be discovered within solitude. 100%.
Yeah. And it's so hard to understand the difference between isolating and solitude.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the balance. And too much solitude can turn into isolation, right? I think while we're here to be with each other, point blank period. Like, there was a Harvard study that came out, the number one variable for success in life, whether it's financial, relationship, whatever, it's the love that we have, that we share with our community. That's it. That's why we're here.
It is.
But I think, taking some time to, go into the cave, and, a lot of great people became great in prison, in that cell, so taking that time I think, in order, if you think about getting a surgery, right, in the hospital, right, the doctor, it's just you and the doctor, friends, family, they can't come in. And I think when you're trying to perform surgery on yourself, it's got to just be you, right, to do the work.
Some of life's greatest epiphanies probably didn't happen on prom night to the prom king. It's the guy whose date canceled on him at the last minute.
Yeah. The suffering is grace, as they say. There's something within, right? Every suffering, every mistake, every problem is a seed of equivalent or greater benefit. It's not when we're at the highest highs, but I think when we're at the lowest lows, and if we can turn into it, lean into it, we can discover the gift that it has to share.
Is there a moment in your life, sorry if I turned the tables here for a second, but I found myself really curious. Was there a moment in your childhood or adolescence that was super, super painful that you look back at now and you're like, oh, wow, that was, a gift, or at least I found the beautiful present in the ugly wrapping paper?
Beautiful present in the ugly wrapping paper. Wow, I like that. I can't pinpoint a specific moment, but like what you just said about you seeking the attention and approval of your father, I definitely felt that throughout my life. And it was not just my father, it was my parents. I was the youngest of 3. And so, I felt like, my parents loved them more than they loved me. This was kind of deep within. Like, I remember every vacation that I went on, I would find myself just kind of crying in the back seat.
Really?
Yeah, on the vacation. As we were driving to, then it was Branson, Missouri, or wherever.
You should cry that you're going to Branson. That's enough to make anybody a sad clown.
And it was, and I think a lot of people face this, and become big, I'm using air quotes, successes in life because they try to prove themselves by making them the money, by getting the following or the fans. And all of it is to get the approval of mommy and daddy.
It really is. It really is.
You got to see that, or it's just going to be a vicious cycle.
I got into mountain climbing for a while, and there's a picture I have up of myself at the summit, and one of my friends came over and he goes, and when Paul got to the top, did he find daddy's love? And I laughed because I knew it was true.
Oh man, I got chills. And the sweat, I got chills.
Another big moment for me was that I'd been going at life 180 degrees the wrong way. When the show was at its most popular and I was getting a lot of the materialistic stuff that I wanted, there was this emptiness inside me. And looking back, it wasn't until I had to get help for, drug and alcohol addiction that I realized I thought the secret to safety was standing out, separating myself from everybody. And then it's like, well, no wonder you feel lonely if you're trying to separate yourself. And it wasn't until I felt the joint purpose of being one of many. It was like a jacuzzi.
Wow.
And it was like, our warts and our failures are the currency that can bind us to other people. But if we're just worried about making a great, successful Instagram post, we never get to connect over, that part of ourselves where we're getting vulnerable. Brene Brown talks about vulnerability in such a great way. But, I never found connection trying to win an award.
Wow. I want to get into awards. But first, you reminded me of it's a meditation. I think it's a Theravada in Buddhism where if you're feeling something like a pain or suffering, you say you're feeling heartbreak. You think about not just your heartbreak, but the thousands or millions of other people at this moment facing that same heartbreak. And so it goes from my pain to the pain, and it builds it definitely softens you and connects you. It's a super amazing practice. Pema Chodron.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah. She put me onto it, and I was like, that's it. That's it. From my pain to the pain.
Yeah. Her book, When Things Fall Apart, is such a great book. But it's so hard in that moment to not take the universe personally.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and this is why I got into spirituality. I'm a big science guy. I got my degree in social science, anthropology, honors, love data, still read peer-reviewed journals. But there's something that transcends science. There's something that transcends the material world, and that's the spirit. That's that thing that is untouched by the mind, by any thought. And so for me, it was the spiritual practices that allowed me to not identify as the person. You said take it personally.
Yeah.
And the word person, right, comes from the Greek word persona, meaning mask. You know, in our society, you know, people say, oh, Paul, you're acting out of character.
Right.
Well, we playing.
Right.
Right. So we all keep, you know, have these facades, these masks that we wear. And it's only when we get in touch with that, which is unspeakable, that really provides us a place to rest. You know, yoga is a science. And you know, a lot of people, they separate science and spirituality.
Oh, no, they're one and the same.
Yeah, I agree. I
You know,
totally
they
agree.
say that physics departments are packed with believers.
Okay. Oh, and Einstein, I mean, he was a sage. He was a guru, right? He said the highest purpose of a human life is to realize that they're one with all things.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's a real hard one, because it's so easy to want to label things and, you know, say that I'm better than that. I'm morally superior to that. And, you know, one of the nice gifts of bottoming out is I get to remember how I was at my worst, and to be able to give people some leeway when they cut me off on the freeway, and to not take it personally and go, that person's probably scared. They're late for a job interview. They're afraid that they're going to die penniless. And it's not about me. And in that moment, I go from anger to gratitude, which is not how I'm wired.
Okay. So you've trained yourself to kind of have this reflex?
Yeah. And I think really truly believing in my bones that there is some benevolent energy in the universe that I can tap into. And not that dark energy doesn't exist, but that within the hurricane, there can be a place of comfort. That kind of makes sense to me, and that's how I picture, and I believe that when we ask for help, or we apologize, or we're of service, that we're changing the atoms in our body, the charge, and that the pathways in the universe are based on that free will that we have to do that. Or maybe it's predestined. I don't know, and I don't have to know.
Yeah. That's beautiful, not knowing.
Oh, it's the most freeing thing in the world. Being a know-it-all is tiring.
Yeah. Well, they say because to know something means that whatever it is dead. You can't really know. Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah, because everything in the universe is changing. It's in flux.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right? So when you think you know something, it's dead. It's no more life to it.
Wow.
That's why the Buddhists, they talk about beginner's mind. The expert sees few possibilities. The beginner sees many. The beginner mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not religious, but I know in the Bible it says to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become again like a child. Mm-hmm. You know, that curiosity, that not knowingness, no labels, just pure mystery and magic.
Yeah. Jack Bruce, who was the bassist for the band Cream, had a doctorate in jazz theory, and he said when he joined Cream, he had to unlearn everything he knew to, let the music flow through him, and to not think, to just feel.
Well, that's the highest state. I mean, we talked about it before. It's like, you mentioned there was a wide receiver who had many things on his mind, and I'm not sure how successful he was, but I think you can be very successful. But I also feel that the peak of success happens in what the scientists call flow. When you're in flow state.
Absolutely.
The Taoists call it one with Tao. The Japanese samurai, they call it mushin. The athletes call it in the zone, which just
everything slows down.
Everything slows down.
It's intuitive, and the same with improv. They said, the UCB has a saying, "Don't think." But it's so hard when your goal is to impress rather than to listen or to,
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. How you feeling?
Warm.
Yeah. Well,
I'm ready to hydrate.
You ready? Okay, all right, let's hydrate. Let's get out of here. Yeah, I feel fully detoxed. You know, I got a few of the heavy metals and all this good stuff out of me. This is a great conversation. I'm
Yeah,
loving
man.
it.
I'm really glad our
it.
paths have crossed.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I call my brain the catastrophizer 4000
Uh,
because it will take anything and just, extrapolate out 5 years from now. I'm in a ditch. I don't have teeth, and the only thing to eat is, corn on the cob.
You mentioned in one of your podcasts about speaking to yourself like you speak to your best friend. Go into that a little bit, because that's a strategy that I love in CBT, which anybody listening to is cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think is one of the gold standards of therapy. It's so good at, I call CBT crushing bad thoughts. And one of the strategies is the double standard technique, which is exactly that. So go into that and how somebody can use that to their benefit.
If we talk to somebody the way that we talk to ourselves, they would get a restraining order against us. Yet we think we're disciplining ourselves. And, like the shame thing that you were talking about, nobody's ever shamed themselves into being the person they want to be. We mistake cruelty with discipline. And that is not the way forward, at least in my opinion. I don't know, maybe for some people, saying, get up out of bed, you lazy piece of shit, and that helps motivate them. But I wonder how the other areas of their life are doing with that kind of talk. And so one of the things that I try to do is not mistake making a note to myself with destroying myself. I don't have to destroy myself. I can make a note to self and say, I didn't react ideally there. If this happens again, and these are things I learned in the support group, by going back over the times that I didn't act the way, I should have. And it's really, for me, it's about upgrading tools. Instead of lashing out at somebody, pick up the phone, call a trusted friend and go, I want to put my fist through a wall. Yeah. And that helps dissipate that anger. And instead of going, yelling at that person and then going, well, I'm the worst person in the world because I did that. No, make a note to self and try to do better next time. Do we expect perfection from our friends? No. Why do we expect it from ourselves?
When you were saying, get up, you lazy piece of shit, it reminds me of this guy, and I definitely like some of what he says, but that sounds exactly like what he says, which is David Goggins. You know David Goggins?
I didn't know the name.
He was like a military guy. I forget which branch of the military, but he's got a book, Never Finished, and he's all about kind of that almost negative self-talk, kind of like bashing yourself in order to get things done. And I think
the drill sergeant voice.
Exactly. And, I think it can work short term, but long term, going to sleep at night, the overall health and stress that you're putting on your heart when you say these things to yourself, don't know if it's worth it.
And what's your relationship with your kids like when that is your mantra for things? Not that kids don't need discipline or consequences for certain kinds of behavior, but I always say that I wish when Forbes puts a billionaire on their cover and does an interview with somebody, that they ask them, what are your kids' 3 favorite movies? Name 5 of their friends. Shouldn't that be a part of the success story of somebody? Yeah. Does the drill sergeant voice ever tell you that? Spend more time with your kid. I mean, maybe it does for some people, but it seems like it's often in the service of productivity and accumulation of wealth and status. And
It's a lot of people that have the things that money can buy, but not the things that money can't buy, which is the friends, the family, the relationships, the love. I always say there's only 2 reasons why we make decisions in life. It comes down to these 2 things. Is it out of fear or is it out of love?
Yes.
That's all it is.
It really is. And it's so hard to understand when it's fear because I think that's where the illusion of trying to control things we can't control comes in, because fear, makes us think there's 1,000 things that we should be doing to control it, when oftentimes the best solution is to just shut up and let go. But it's hard because it's fear. Its central nervous system is, and the negative self-talk is, you're a wimp. What are you doing? But it's so freeing to realize you're not the world's policeman.
Yeah.
It's not your job to teach other people. If other people learn, that's great. That's a great byproduct. Give them the dignity of their own rough path.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. How did you get to this? It really is an enlightened state.
Dude, a lot of work.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of support group meetings, reading books, going to therapy, conversations, a lot of listening, and a lot of, doing the post-mortem on my worst moments as a human being, especially in terms of my actions, and going, this is not what I learned in kindergarten, this guy that I am. I had a moment a couple of months before I got sober where, I was trying to cheat on my wife and failed. And what a horrible feeling that is when you're trying to be a scumbag and you fail. And I woke up the next morning and I was super hungover, and I just went, is this the man you wanted to be when you were a little boy? But I was so afraid to ask for help. It took me another couple of months. One morning I woke up and my first 3 thoughts every morning were, you slept too late, you're a lazy piece of shit, your life is passing you by. And for some reason on that day, July 21st, 2003, I said, God help me, I can't do this anymore. And something shifted in me, and I found the courage to ask for help that day. And I look back on that and I was like, I let the universe help me instead of trying to control it. One of the definitions of help is being open to the form it appears in. Otherwise, we would have figured it out on our own. But it took me, and I still fight that. I still fight anything that isn't going to bring me instant pleasure.
What was the most difficult decision you had to make in order to fulfill your destiny?
I think cutting contact with my mom. There were things that happened when I was a kid that were on the sexual abuse spectrum. And I didn't cut contact with her because of what she did. I did it because she wouldn't accept responsibility for it, and even more so respect the boundaries that I was trying to set at that time, as an adult. And I realized like the thing I said about you got to have compassion for yourself. Yeah. I have compassion for her. I don't think she's a bad person. I think she's a sick person. Yeah. But it drags my mental health down trying to maintain a relationship with somebody who doesn't respect boundaries. And that was the hardest thing I ever had to do, because it's a death. In a way, it's a death of the image you had of that person you had to create to survive. That, oh, I'm safe, I'm just dirty, or I deserved it, or I wanted it, or whatever. And that was no longer serving me. And it's weird when good people do things that are really hurtful, because you feel like, oh, I'm throwing them under the bus. No, I am doing it. I wish I could have a relationship with her. And there are probably people who, if you put them in my shoes, they would be able to, but I can't. And I have to surrender to that truth to find peace in my life. And I probably, when she dies, will feel guilt, regret, but there also will be that part of me was like, no, you took care of yourself. You did the right thing, because it would have affected so many areas of your life to continue to put yourself through that thing where people don't respect your boundaries.
How important is it to have boundaries?
And to recognize boundaries. I didn't realize until probably a decade ago how bad my boundaries were. And so that's been a learning process. But I don't think intimacy is possible without boundaries. And part of boundaries is the willingness to have difficult conversations and to say, I love you, I care about you, but I this is not acceptable to me when things like this happen. When you do this, if it happens again, I'm going to have to do X, hang up, leave the restaurant, take a break from our relationship, whatever it is. But that, to me, was the path to feeling like the world was more safe. And when the world feels more safe, I can be more relaxed around my friends, with my girlfriend. I never thought I would enjoy monogamy. And it wasn't until I started setting boundaries and feeling safe in the world that I could feel safe in monogamy and in a relationship. Because when you don't set boundaries, you feel, I'll talk about myself. When I wasn't setting boundaries, I felt that I was at the mercy of what the world wanted because I wasn't willing to set a boundary and protect myself. But once I am, when I get into a relationship, I know I'm not at the mercy of whatever my partner wants. I can say, hey, that tone of voice you talked at me with a couple of days ago, it hurt my feelings or it really bothered me. Can we talk about this? And that gives your partner an opportunity to reveal their character. So it's a win-win either way. If they disrespect you and they don't listen to you, you got more information about whether or not you want to stay in that relationship. Wow. And it gave her an opportunity to show her character, which is that she listens. My girlfriend listens to me and she cares about me. And the love is still there 4.5 years in. I love monogamy. And I never thought I would be that guy. I used to think that people that said monogamy is awesome were lame or lying. But boundaries were the beginning of that. Being nice to myself.
Wow. And honest. That's beautiful.
It's hard. There's almost nothing that we can't say to somebody if we're willing to say it with the right words at the right time in the right tone of voice.
Say that again.
There's almost nothing that we can't say to somebody if we're willing to say it at the right time with the right words in the right tone of voice. I've had to learn that in support groups with people whose phone calls were becoming monologues. And I was like, how do I let them know they're boring me to death?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's not that they're boring me. It's that I feel like an audience member. And I was like, those are the words. And so I said, I love you. I care about you. I want to have a relationship with you. But when we talk on the phone, I feel like an audience member and I start to feel resentful and I don't want to feel that. And I figured you would want to know. And the ball's in their court.
How have they responded?
One person never called me back again. I'm okay with that. The other person took it in and thanked me for it. But now when the phone rings, I know I have that tool, so I don't feel like I'm at the mercy of a long-winded person that has no sense of balance in a conversation. And that's huge.
That's awesome. Wow. I mean, what you're saying is just... It's just living a true existence, a true life. And I think anybody who loves you would understand how you feel. 1,000%.
You're giving them that opportunity to love you. The most loving thing you can do with somebody is allow them to love you. Allow them to help you.
Beautiful. And so why do you think there's so much resistance? Because a lot of people just, they're people pleasers or they want to, maintain an image. Why do you think there's a lot of resistance in telling the truth to people that we love?
I think we're afraid of hurting people's feelings. And I think a really big thing is that's the script to the play we grew up with, is to not tell the truth, to not address the elephant in the room, because it wasn't safe to tell the truth. And so we just get used to that. And to change that is hard, especially if we've never performed this new play with these new words before. We don't know what the words are. I had to learn them from other people, to hear them model what setting boundaries sounds like. And to put myself in their shoes and say, if this truth were to come my way, what kind of words would make it palatable to me? And that helps me come come up with the words. And you're giving them an opportunity for growth, whether they choose to take advantage of it or not. But by just burying it and just being resentful and avoiding them and, secretly looking at your watch, that's not a loving thing to do to yourself or to them.
It's fear.
It's fear, man. It goes back to what you said. You can come at it from love or fear. It's really hard for those two things to be in the same room at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dang near impossible.
Yeah, like if you think, I had this moment where when I really began to fall in love with my girlfriend, where then it went to fear that she was going to get hurt or die, and then I would feel this tremendous pain, and she would be gone. And I went, that's not love. That's wanting to control. But it's, that's one of the ones where they might not be in the same room together, but man, they're pretty close.
Yeah. Somebody said, you make easy choices, it give you a hard life. You make the hard choices, you live an easy life. Sometimes we have to make those hard things that are hard, right? The conversations, the being vulnerable, when we can share our truth, live in our truth, and stand on our truth. This is what makes things easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so ironic that we're so afraid of the unknown, but every day we seek a new experience. But there are certain experiences that we don't want to know. You don't want to know what it's like to speak up for yourself around somebody who might react badly. But, we're scrolling on Instagram for some new video we haven't seen.
That's so true.
Before.
Great point. I want to play a quick game.
Sure.
So this I call the 5 bests. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions, and it doesn't have to be, I know we don't like absolutes.
Sure.
So just whatever comes to mind, the best X in your life. What was the best advice you ever received?
Shut up and listen. I don't know if they said shut up, but that's kind of a mantra early in support groups is, you've probably been a know-it-all for most of your life, and how's that working for you? You're here, so you need to do something different.
That's it. I think Dr. Phil says that. How's that working for you?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, shut up and listen. Love it. What's the best investment you ever made?
Working on myself, working through my trauma, and asking for help with my addictions, because it gave me all the byproducts that I am able to enjoy in my life right now that bring me peace. I thought I needed drugs to feel peace, but I needed meaning and purpose and all the other things that I was like, that's for lame people.
Best time in your life?
I think right now, physically, no, not so much, but in terms of just feeling connected, like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I mean, isn't that one of the greatest feelings in the world when you're not questioning where you're supposed to be at this very moment?
That's it. All stress leaves if you can recognize you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now.
And it's so hard, especially if we're having trouble paying the rent or somebody's mad at us. That is really, really hard. But I think one of the gifts of getting older is you can look back at all the things that you thought were wrong and go, oh, that had to happen for me to experience this beautiful thing right now. And so I like to think that I'm either in the process of enjoying something or building my appreciation for it when it does come.
Love that. One of my favorite mantras that I live by is, try to live by, is all is well and unfolding as it should.
Yeah. I mean, why would we try to predict how the universe is expanding?
It's just arrogance.
It's so big, it's so complicated, and yet we do it every single day. I mean, how much of what you predicted 5 years ago is exactly right, exactly true right now, and things you were worried about?
Not much.
Yeah, so, I try to I bring the crystal ball out every day. Coming here, I was like, oh, there's going to be a traffic jam. I'm going to be late. They're going to be pissed off at me. I'm like, oh, just shut the fuck up. Put the crystal ball away, get in your car, leave early. That you have control over.
See, that's a technique in CBT. It's funny because everything you're saying sounds like you're a master in CBT because that's called fortune telling.
Yeah.
You know, the crystal ball. That's such a good technique when we realize we can't tell the future. We can't tell what somebody else is thinking either.
Yeah.
So important. Best book you've ever read?
I think maybe A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle or Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I mean, those are two, and of course the literature in my support groups. But if you're talking about outside of support groups, I would say those two, at least in terms of like self-knowledge and that whole genre. Yeah, I think those two they're pretty amazing.
Best of the best.
The best of the best. Yeah. Or Motley Crue's autobiography. One of those.
Okay.
One of those three.
Okay. Best mental health strategy.
Deep breath and pause. You know.
Now, when you breathe, is it a certain cadence on your breath, or I'm just going to take a deep breath?
Deep breath. Let it out. Understand that not immediately knowing the answer is not failing at life.
Yeah.
My brain is wired to immediately weigh in with something that my central nervous system is telling me, and it's almost never right. It's usually filtered through fear, and I just got to remember that I will probably always filter everything through my ingrained fears and beliefs, and I hope they're not there always, but I'm planning for them to be, so that I can cope and have friends and enjoy life instead of reacting out of fear. And because I think a lot of us are wired to just want to be isolated, thinking about ourselves, anticipating what the doom is going to look like so that we can be safe. And that strategy has rarely, if ever, worked out for me. But
there's so I'll keep mentioning CBT, but the predecessor of CBT, it was called REBT. It was called Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, created by this guy named Albert Ellis, all of these practices, they're kind of founded upon, actually not even kinda, they are founded upon Buddhism and Stoicism. One of Albert Ellis's techniques was when your mind when you filter it through that negative, is to laugh at it, or to make a song about it.
Oh, I love that. When I started looking at my brain as just a twisted animation festival that I can sit back and be amused by, that was very, very freeing.
That's good.
And without meditation, I don't think I would have ever been able to separate myself from my thoughts.
That's a big one. That's it.
It's a big one.
That's it. The noise in the mind. We think that we are this chatterbox in the head, but we are something else, the witness of it, right?
Yeah. And it is very often thoughts of me judging myself for how well I'm meditating.
Yeah. That's the ego. The ego is tricky.
The ego, there's nothing. It won't crash. There is no party. It won't crash. And I joke that meditation for me, honestly, most of the time is me thinking about myself for 20 minutes with my eyes closed. And I just try to be non-judgmental and go, that's where I'm at today.
That's it.
And maybe a positive byproduct of that could be that it's introducing me to something that I'm ruminating on and that I might need to look at or let go of.
I mentioned Anthony DeMello. He's got a book entitled Don't Change Yourself. That's actually the name of the poem too, Don't Change. But it's really just about watching the game being played and not going into the game, not, watching the clothes in the line, in the washing machine, and not jumping into it and getting involved in it, to be able to just stay as that witness, and then it'll change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody said in one of my support groups one time, I can't control whether or not a bird lands on my head, but I can control whether or not I let it build a nest.
Wow.
Yes. Oh my God. Wow. And judging yourself for your first thought or your first impulse is one of the meanest things you can do. As
totally.
it's not about thoughts, it's about actions. And yeah, we can influence our thoughts, but a lot of times just taking principled action, even though we're scared, even though we think it's not going to work out, has a way of working out.
Wow. This guru, Nisargadatta, he says, the problem is you think you have thoughts. Thoughts happen. They're like farts. They just kind of pop up, right?
Yeah.
We're not in control, right? They just happen.
They just happen.
And that awareness, that insight can change everything. Last game.
Okay.
This is the magic wand, right? So imagine you had a magic wand and you could wave that wand tonight at the world. Make a wish and wave that magic wand. And tomorrow when you woke up in the morning, that wish will be granted. What would your magic wand wish be?
I think I would have to divide that into two things because one would be a wish for me and one would be a wish for the world. Awesome. Can I have two?
You can have both, yeah.
Okay. For the world, you know what? I tell myself it would be for the world, but it would be for me, which is for the division to be healed in this country and for the media to have some type of accountability. And if it was just a selfish wish for me, I think it would be that I would physically be like not mentally, but physically be like I was when I was in my 20s, to be able to do those things again, to have that energy and muscle and, you know.
Oh, that's possible. We can make that happen. I had Robbie Robinson on. He's a 76-year-old bodybuilder.
Wow.
And he's in shape.
Yeah.
He's in shape. He looks good, feels good. He lit like we trained together in Venice, Golds in Venice. Right. It's possible. It's totally possible. Yeah, I think you have that wish.
I will look into that.
Yeah.
And get back to you.
Awesome. Where can people find you, follow you, look more into your work and podcast?
The podcast is called The Mental Illness Happy Hour, and you can find it wherever you get your podcast. The website for it is mentalpod.com, and social media is at mentalpod.
Awesome. Paul, thank you so much.
I can't wait to have you on my show.
I'm excited. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you for being on Sauna Sessions.